I'm Kathleen Feldkamp, Graddy, and we are working on an oral history project. And so our first interview is with my mother, Nancy Every Feldkamp. And I'm going to get her talking about her life. So, Mom, do you have an earliest memory?
Well, one of my early memories was being carried by my father and looking down and seeing how far it was to the floor, and that was fun for me. And then when we visited my grandparents on the farm in Bridgewater Township on Brown Road, we would love it. My two brothers and myself would just love going there because we would have fun with our cousins who lived just across the road. And we would play games, and we played, one of our favorite games was hide and seek. And another one was wood tag, where the one who was it was trying to catch the people who were going from tree to tree, and if they were touched, they would be it. And that was a fun game for a while, and that got boring. And we'd do a lot of looking around the farm, scouting the barns and seeing what was inside. And I'm saying too much.
No, it's okay. Do you have a best memory of your childhood? A very best memory?
A best memory? Boy, that's hard to sort out. There were great family dinners at Christmas and Thanksgiving, and my grandmother would always feed us chicken, and she would start out by going out in the backyard and grabbing a chicken and doing the butchering and removing the feathers, and I really want to help her with that. And then she would go on and cook the chicken, or 2 or 3, depending on the number of guests, and we were in on that, my brothers and I.
Sounds wonderful. Do you remember, did Grandma have a Christmas tree?
Not always. Once in a while they would cut a big branch from a big pine tree in their woods and decorate that. I remembered those times. Decorated branch. Right.
Uh-huh.
But that was fun.
Yeah.
We loved it.
Yeah. Well, I know that you went to different one-room schoolhouses, and I was curious about that because you're an artist. If you remember learning how to draw.
I just don't remember learning how. I remember loving to have a pencil and paper, and it was important to have a lot of scrap paper available. So I did a lot of sketching of people and whatever little kids do. And we had crayons for coloring, that sort of thing.
Mm-hmm.
I did quite a bit of that. And I did have music lessons too at quite an early age. I took lessons from a lady in Chelsea, and weekly I think they were. And at that time I was going to school in the big school in the center of Chelsea, which is not there anymore. And I would walk to her house, which was a couple of blocks from the school, at noon, I think, or maybe it was after school, and take my lesson. That's when my lessons began, and I did that for a long time.
Mm-hmm. Do you remember her name?
Mrs. Schmidt.
Mrs. Schmidt.
Yep.
Did she have a lot of students?
She had enough to make a pretty good recital, maybe 7 or 8.
Mm-hmm. Do you remember performing at the recital when you were very young?
Yeah, I do. I remember that first one, I think. My aunt made me a dress perfect for it, you know.
She did.
I was dressed up in my recital dress. And I played a Bach thing, and I don't know what else. There were quite a few little students doing like things like that.
Mm-hmm. So I think, did you practice a lot?
At home, I was supposed to practice a lot. But those pieces I was taking were very short things at the time, so it didn't take too much time.
Well, I know that you really loved music always, and so at some point later on, what did you decide you wanted to be when you grew up?
Oh, I wanted to be something to do with music. I never wanted to teach it. I wanted to do it somehow. And I loved playing piano. And my mother was musical too. And she gave lessons to quite a few students before she passed away.
Well, didn't you tell me once that you wanted to be a concert pianist?
That was in there somewhere, right. I never knew what that required, but that was in my dream world, I think.
Well, I remember some beautiful pieces that you used to play when I was a child. And there was one in particular that would just get me all excited and make me dance.
Really?
Yeah.
Do you remember which one?
It was some Bach piece in a major key, and it was very fast and exciting.
That might have been the one I played for my senior recital.
Well, let's get back to what it was like on the farm in the 30s. I know Grandpa and Grandma had more than one farm, which they rented. And do you remember what it was like helping them farm, and how Grandpa got started back in farming?
Yeah, my father lost his job as an insurance salesman when the Depression hit. And so he wanted to go back to farming because he had grown up on a farm and studied at Michigan State, knew quite a lot about it. And so he rented a farm. The first one he rented was on US 12 between Grass Lake and Chelsea. A nice big brick house and nice barns. And he went back to general farming. We had chickens and pigs and sheep and horses. And we had, during the Depression, we had 2 hired men to help. And Dad paid them $30 a month. Another thing I remember about that farm was having tramps stop by for food. And we would always be glad to help them. I don't remember them staying overnight in the barn, but they probably did. It was quite tough. And then Dad decided to buy a bunch of pigs to feed and sell when they got heavy and make a little money. And then the price of pigs went way down. And he ended up butchering some of those and selling them out of the kitchen.
Selling the meat.
Yeah, right, fresh meat out of the kitchen. And people from Chelsea would come out, and I remember him having a smokehouse and doing some smoking of the pork. And people would be glad to have fresh pork.
Yeah. And you had refrigeration then, right?
We just had ice box.
Oh, you had ice box.
Right. So I don't know how it worked, but that's the way it was done.
Mm-hmm. And you would probably have ice delivered
I think
weekly
so.
or every few days or something.
Had to be. I just don't remember that.
So I've heard that story about the pigs before too, because it was a huge deal. And it was a good lesson in economics for me because of the way farming still is dependent on market forces.
Mm-hmm. Right.
That really nobody can control effectively. So farmers are still dealing with that. Did you have a favorite teacher?
In country school?
Mm-hmm. Or in high school?
I don't remember a favorite one.
Well, do you remember how old you were when Grandpa and Grandma were able to buy a farm?
I was in 8th grade when they finally were able to buy one. And so by that time they had moved to and bought a farm just off 52, and they had a Tecumseh address.
That was on Munger Road.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
And do you remember what you thought about that place when you first realized that would be your home? Do you remember your impression of the place?
It was a nice big house, and I had my own nice bedroom. And nothing particular.
Did you think it was pretty?
Yeah, and it was all new because I had to go through 8th grade there, and I didn't know anyone. I was kind of worried about that. But it was good for my parents because they finally got on their feet enough so they could start a good, much better life.
Mm-hmm.
Although...
We're going to ignore it.
Just let it go.
Okay.
Call from 124.
Oh dear.
1809.
Do you remember the horses
Oh, for crying out loud.
when you all moved to the Munger Road house? Was Grandpa still farming with horses?
Yes, he...
Inquiries that may be covered by your insurance company are little or no cost.
Yeah, just pull it off the...
Press 1 and to be placed on a
Right around the corner, yeah. There you go.
Well, that's something. Let's just keep rolling. Go ahead about the horses at Munger Road.
Oh, Dad had horses, and he would do a lot with that team of horses. And we felt terrible one morning when we found that only one horse was available, and the other one had floundered in a soft place in back of the field behind the barns, and he had gone down with just his head showing, and that was really a blow to us. But it wasn't long before Dad was able to get a Ford tractor, and I took turns plowing and dragging and cultivating and that kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
I don't remember driving the horses on any tools at all.
Did you have horses to ride just for fun and exercise?
We had an extra horse that wasn't a workhorse that we had fun with. riding.
Do you remember its name?
Bonnie.
Bonnie.
Bonnie. And Bonnie was, we had a saddle for her that we didn't always use, but we learned to ride bareback, and then a friend of mine from next door would love to come over, and we would ride the horses, and one of us would take one of the work horses and ride bareback on that. And the horses would like to race, or maybe we raced them, I don't remember. But the workhorse would get ahead of Bonnie, who was more of a small horse, but a little lazier, I guess. And then she would stop quick, and we would almost go over her head. But
Oh my gosh. The workhorse did that?
no, Bonnie,
Oh,
the other
Bonnie
horse,
would do that?
would stop because she wouldn't try to race anymore.
What color, what did Bonnie look like?
Oh, she was just a brown horse.
Oh
She
my
wasn't very
gosh.
elegant looking.
Well, even after Grandpa had the small tractors, did he still use the horses, I assume?
If he
For
could.
certain things?
I don't remember a lot of, well, he would do haying and hook the hay picker-upper.
Oh, crying out loud.
Just leave it off. Well, I don't know. Would it? You were talking about hooking up some equipment behind the horses.
Hay loader behind the wagon, and the hay loader would pick up the hay and drop it on the wagon. And that was interesting to watch. I wasn't involved with that.
I bet it was interesting to watch. I was going to ask you, since you and Dad moved to this farm when you were pretty young still, what did you think of this place when you first realized you were going to buy it?
This place,
This farm.
after we were married and had one baby, it was not very much of a house, but we were just young and starting out, and neighbors were in the same situation as we were, more or less, and we were full of enthusiasm for it. And little by little we made it livable.
And that was in 1950 when you and Dad moved here.
Right.
Where did you first live when you and Dad were married?
We lived in a rental place on M52, maybe about a mile from where we are now.
And then you lived at Pleasant Lake too, right? What's one of your favorite memories of living at Pleasant Lake?
Oh, one of my favorite memories was hearing the loons that were at Pleasant Lake, and that special noise that loons do. It was very nice, and it was great to have fresh fish. That was good to have. And Dad, after working for his father all day doing something hot and sweaty, it would be great for him to take a dip in the lake
Oh, yeah.
to cool off and clean up.
So, do you remember pulling any pranks when you were a kid?
Silliness.
Some of your friends, did you have a best friend after you, or really any time? I know it was hard because for a long time the family would move every few years to a different rental.
Right. So it wasn't really easy to have a best friend. But there were some that were more fun than others, I guess. Pranks, I don't know about that. I did have a friend in Chelsea that liked music too, and she was good at playing guitar. And she liked cowboy music, so we would sing cowboy music and she would play the guitar. That was fun.
Do you remember her name?
Flo Longworth.
Ah, Flo Longworth. When you moved here, you were also part of a new community, I mean new for you, and Sharon Church is just down the road, and how did you get involved with the church at first?
Well, we were busy having a family and little kids and doing all the family things, trying to keep up with that. And so we didn't go to church when the kids were tiny, but I think when our oldest daughter was maybe about 3 or 4, we tried to go to church. And by that time we had 2 others, and so we just, and I didn't get involved with music or anything at the church until much later. When the church needed someone to play music, service music, I got involved, and then I decided to take some lessons on how to play pipe organ, and that was very good. I loved that, playing the pipe organ. And so that, and I played it for about 20 years for the church. And then it got a little harder because my vision was not good anymore. But I gave that up when I was in my 90s, I think.
You gave up playing piano anyway.
Yeah, right. I played for the choir for a while.
Do you remember a time when you were director of the choir and the adult choir and the youth choir? Do you remember that?
That didn't go on for very long.
Oh, okay.
A couple of years maybe.
Well, I just remember you being extremely busy, and I just wanted to see, what was your favorite part of having 3 little babies? 3 little girls. I'm the middle of that pod of little girls.
Oh, I remember a lot of washing clothes and hanging on the line. And trying to make, I loved making dresses for these little girls. And they would get new dresses for Christmas. And that took quite a bit of time.
Yeah, but that's what people did then, was they made a lot of their own clothes.
Right.
There was a lot more self-sufficiency.
Right. And I remember trying to sit at that sewing machine and having one of the littlest kids climb up on the chair and stand behind me and try to hug me. And while I was trying to sew a straight line.
Yeah.
And that's about all I remember about that.
Well, I remember hearing about a contest from one of the magazines.
Oh, yes.
Different women's magazines would run a contest.
It was Parents Magazine.
Parents Magazine.
And there was a contest about designing and making a dress for some little kid, and taking pictures of it, and I won that contest. I won a brand new sewing machine.
Yeah.
I made a dress for you.
Yes, you did.
Do you remember the dress?
I remember the pictures of the dress. I vaguely remember thinking it was just a beautiful dress. And it made me feel very special and pretty.
Yes.
And it had a white pinafore with a watermelon slice on the
For
pocket.
a pocket, right.
Appliqued on the pocket.
Right.
Yeah. Just
Had a full skirt.
and a very full skirt. So this was the 50s when skirts
Yeah.
were very full. And the photograph is a very nice photograph too. Whoever took the photograph, they helped you win that contest, I think.
Could be.
Yeah,
It
who
could
took
be.
the photograph?
Who probably took the photograph? Maybe Reno.
Yeah, maybe Dad took the photograph.
Do you remember?
I think so.
Well, that's a lovely memory
It
for
was
me
a
too.
family thing.
This is a very child-centered household, a very girl-centered household
Yes, it was.
for a long time, until my brother was born.
Yeah.
And of course, we thought he was great.
Right.
And so, are we about done? Okay. Well, thank you very much, Mom, for letting me pick
welcome.
your brain.
Oh dear.